Well, with me in the London studio is Deven Ghelani, the Director of Policy in Practice, which helps people navigate the benefit system. Deven Ghelani, you can tell how worried and anxious Josh and his mum are. He's worried he'll lose all the help he'll get. I mean, Pip certainly, and eventually the higher rates of universal credit. Is he representative, that kind of worry, of perhaps 1 million or more disabled people?
Absolutely. I think the key feedback we've had from the people we work with on the front line is bewilderment and uncertainty exactly how these changes are going to affect people. I think the other point is it isn't just the 1 million disabled people who are going to be impacted by this. The thing I've picked up is how much it helps their carers, their friends, their families to allow that person to have a greater degree of independence than they otherwise might. And these are other people who might otherwise be working and who might need to kind of change their circumstances to adequately look after their loved ones.
Now, Josh clearly wants to work and Pip helps him cope. And indeed, we've had a tweet from Anastasia who says Pip is misunderstood. It's to cover the additional costs in having disability. And she says she's very worried what's going to happen. So it's not about work at all, is it, Pip? An intelligent and articulate young man like Josh wants to work. Does it mean employers have to make more adjustments to let people like him work and cope with their disability?
Yeah, I think there are two big challenges with supporting people with disabilities into work. One is kind of employers' ability, attitudes and approaches and being able to put that support in place. The other one is kind of the economies that some people find themselves in. So the local economy, are there jobs available in general? And, for people who've perhaps been out of work for some time or perhaps have things that hold them back, and making sure that support in place is there for them is something that I think the government needs to be investing in. And to be fair to the government, it says it is. It's going to be investing heavily in employment support, certainly more so than in recent years for disabled people.
Yes, I mean, Joss explained the points for Pip and why he'll lose that, but he will also be affected by changes to universal credit and the work allowance. Just explain how that will work.
So the limited capability for work-related activity is an element that you get on top of support for people who, because of their disability, find it hard to find work. That's effectively going to be halved over time. So for new applicants, it'll be halved from next April. For people like Josh who are receiving it today, it'll be frozen and eventually their value of that will be eroded over time. It's going to, it's the support that's in place. If people can't find work, you do need extra support. Not if they can't find work, if they're not able to work.
But will that be there? Because the Resolution Foundation says over 1 million people will lose support, some of them thousands of pounds a year. Will they be left with no help? The money just goes?
Well, they're scrapping the work capability assessment, which is there for people to assess people for the limited capability for work-related activity. There's no love lost for the work capability assessment. No one who has been through it, I've found, has a particularly positive story about their experience. But tying it to personal independence payment assessments, which are there to look at your disability, means that there is a gap for people with disabilities who can't work. And I think that is incredibly worrying for a lot of people. And the loss of that will be... It's hard to know how employment support will help because the assessments today have found that they're not able to work right now.
I mean, the government says there's a problem and, 3 million people not working or looking for work due to their health. It can't save 5 billion without taking money off 1 million disabled people. But is that a political choice? Are there other things they could have done?
They could do other things. I think the government's take is that the number of claims for health-related disability benefits have been rising faster than the prevalence of those health conditions. So their argument is, kind of regardless of the fiscal situation, this is something that they would be looking at in any case. But it definitely is a choice because you've got other things you could do. There have been tax rises in the past. We've just had a round of those. There are public spending cuts coming probably next week in the spring statement. The other two groups, potential, particularly for the DWP, is the triple lock on state pensions, which we know is incredibly expensive, but is a manifesto commitment, and they've already had difficulty over that. And then borrowing, which is where I would go.
Both of which, of course, have been ruled out by the Chancellor. And finally, Deven, what's your advice to people? I mean, like Josh and his mum and all the others who are worried about the future, what should they be doing now?
I think firstly to the government, I would say I would make sure the support is in place for people before these changes come into effect. For people who are impacted by these changes, I'd say these changes aren't coming in immediately. Reassessments will happen over time. In that time, engage with and feed back into the consultations and let the government know the impacts that these changes are going to have on you.
Yes, and of course they're not consulting on all these changes, are they? But you could certainly write and tell them about it, I'm sure, or tell your MP. Deven Ghelani from Policy and Practice, thanks. Well, there'll be more details on these...